So today we have a cheap Centurion deck that only uses one of the new box, and the other cards are all pretty easy to obtain. For example, all of the staples that we're playing are from either box ships or from character jewels. Like Veiler, you can get them from character jewels, same as Book of Moon, and DD Crow and Dark Ruler No More are recently added to the box chip pool as well. So Centurion is a pretty difficult deck to get into. I've never played Centurion before it got added into Duel Links, even though it has been around in the TCG and Master Duel for quite some time. I've just never tried out the deck, so it did take me some time to kind of get used to the combos. It is kind of not very straightforward because there are a lot of different paths you can take to get to the same end board, and it gets even more difficult when your opponent starts to interact with your board. But the basic gist of the deck is that it is a synchro-based deck that is based around mainly level 12 synchros, but sometimes it makes a level 8 synchro as well. And it summons their monsters mainly from the back row as continuous traps. So you have a lot of effects that put your monsters in your back row as continuous traps, and then they can summon themselves during the main phase as quick effects in both your own and your opponent's main phase to summon themselves from your back row, trigger some of your effects, and then your field spell also allows you to quick synchro when you summon from your back row as well. So this deck has a lot of ability to synchro spam and also make Crimson Dragon as well, same as the other top tier synchro decks in the meta, like, you know, the Stardust deck and the Red Dragon Archfiend deck. This deck can also make use of Crimson Dragon and make the really powerful level 12 synchros as well. So we're playing one red Supernova Dragon because it is from the same box, but obviously if you have the level 12 Quasar, you will definitely want to play at least one copy, but I would definitely recommend 2 copies because you can make 2 copies pretty easily in your one card combo, as I will show you later on in the video. So if you have Shooting Quasar Dragon, what you'll do is you add 2 copies and then you take out like one Legacia and probably one Primus, and then your extra deck will probably look like this. But the replays will be using a version without Shooting Quasar. So the combos will be pretty much the same, but you just won't be making the Quasar for your end board, and you will be instead making one of the other level 12s. So we'll quickly go over the cards. We have 1 copy of Primera. It is completely playable with only 1 Primera because your skill just searches anything. This card is your main searcher. When it is special or normal summoned, you can add anything from your deck to your hand. And then when it is a continuous trap, you also get to summon itself. This effect is shared with pretty much all of the main deck monsters, so I won't repeat them. Trudea can do that as well, and also as an ignition effect can put itself plus another Centurion monster to the back row. Archery is a really good card to just give you a whole bunch of draws. It is a brick in the TCG and Master Duel, but because the skill just gives you all the consistency that you ever need, this is not a brick in Duel Links, same as the other 1 copy of monsters that we are playing. Archery basically just lets you draw a card every time you summon it, so it just snowballs a lot. That's why we're playing a lot of hand traps instead of back row, because the deck clogs itself a lot using the continuous traps and also draws a lot of cards in both players' turns. So you want to have more hand traps so that when you draw into them, you can immediately use them without having them set in the first place. And also, one thing to mention is that Archie is a tuner, but it can be treated as a non-tuner, so it is pretty flexible, but usually you will treat it as a tuner for most of your combos. MF6 is a level 8 monster that just summons itself, but the important part is that it has a quick effect that puts one of your monsters back into your back row. And because Duel Links only has 3 back row slots, you often run into a situation where you have like 1 or 2 traps set, plus a face-up monster in your spell and trap zone, and then you don't have any more space. So you will want one of them to be summoned during your opponent's main phase, and then trigger the field spell to synchro summon. and you will want to basically refill your back row with another face-up monster so that you can use the effects of your counter trap or your quick play spell. So the way you'll do that is when you use the effect to summon from your back row, you can, after you synchro summon, you can use the effect of MF6 from your hand or graveyard, and then put another card back into your back row so that you have your traps alive back again. Gargle 2 is a level 8 that can also be treated as a level 4 if it is summoned from the back row. And also when it is synchro summoned, you get to add this back from your hand, and then you can also summon it from your hand by sending a monster. So you can send the monster cards in your back row, but sometimes you actually want to send the synchros because, again, Duel Links doesn't have a lot of zones, which is a huge problem for a lot of modern TCG decks, like same with Sprite and like Valence. So having a way to get rid of stuff on your field is actually pretty useful. Only one copy of Chimeria. This card is a non-tuner level 4. It's kind of a negate, but honestly, this is mostly used for a free level 4 monster that can summon itself, because your skill does allow you to put a monster to your back row. So this is just another name that you can summon. Every one of these main deck monsters can only be special summoned once. Like every time you summon themselves from the back row, you lock yourself from special summoning itself for the rest of the turn. So that's why we need all of these different named monsters so that we can summon them once each. We have 2 field spells. This allows you to discard a card and then place a Centurion from the deck to your back row. This is also a starter. Same with Emblema Oath. This also allows you to put a card from your deck to your back row. It also has another effect to set a spell trap instead, but usually you're just using this to put a monster in the back row to start your combos. This is one of the less good starters just because your main line combo goes through one of it. So in your main combo, your synchro searches Emblema Oath and then you have to activate it to get another monster. But if you start with Emblema Oath, you couldn't activate a second one because it is once per turn. So it is still played at 3 copies just because it is still a pretty good extender when your opponent interacts with your combo. You can then activate the Emblema Oath to keep extending on your combos. With 1 copy of Emblema Salvation, this is not usually played in the TCG or Master Duel, so you might not be familiar with this card. This is basically a banish. It's like Photon Stream of Destruction. This is pretty useful because your skill just adds this to your hand when you go second, which basically allows you to banish any card on the field before you commit. And that's pretty much it. It's also an Emblema card, which means that it is searchable with one of your synchros, but usually just grab this card off of your skill. With 1 copy of Wake Up Centurion, this just basically gives you a free token, and also can banish itself from the graveyard to send a Centurion card to the graveyard, and the card you'll be sending is this card, Centurion Phalanx. The reason why we're playing 2 copies is because you want one to be sent from the deck using Wake Up, and then the other one you can set on your field. This card banishes a monster temporarily. You get to summon it back during the next standby phase, but a funny interaction with this card is that if you banish one of your opponent's monsters, during your opponent's turn, it won't return during your next standby phase because it doesn't actually return. It is treated as a special summon, and your skill says you cannot special summon monsters except for Centurions, except from the extra deck, and that counts with the effect of Phalanx. So the skill actually locks you from summoning back the monster that you banish, which is a good thing because that means when you banish your opponent's monster, it just stays banished forever. It has a second, arguably better effect, which is to banish itself from the graveyard to revive a Centurion synchro monster, and it loses 1500 attack. So this just basically allows you to extend your combos. In the TCG, this is used to play around Nibiru as well because it just revives your monster back after you get hit by it. And finally, we have a copy of Centurion True Awakening. So this card is a lot harder to use than the other trap because this can just be used whenever you want. But this needs to send a face-up monster card from your spell and trap zone. But the effect is a lot better, so it just basically negates anything. But the hard part is to have this card set plus a face-up card that you can send. So you'll be basically doing the thing that I said to activate MF6 to put a card back after you summon from your back row so that your cards like the counter trap can actually activate. For the non-engine, we're playing 3 Veilers, 3 Crows. These are like the best cheap, quote-unquote cheap back rows, hand traps that you can play. These are pretty easy to obtain and are pretty good in this meta. If you have Duel and Nibiru, that could be good in this deck as well. Like any good hand trap that is good in the meta can be considered in this deck. For the spells, non-engine spells, we were playing 3 Dark Ruler. Dark Ruler is pretty good as a replacement for Droplet, because it basically just negates everything without needing you to discard anything, but it prevents you from dealing damage. So it is only good when going second, but that's okay because if you go first, you just discard it with your field spell. And it basically does a pretty similar role with Droplet, so if your opponent has like a full board of shooting Quasars, you can just activate this card and then they all get negated. And it's pretty hard for them to play around it. And also we have 3 Book of Moons. It is a lot less good than obviously Droplet or even Eclipse or Lava Golem, but it is obtainable from character duels, which makes it pretty good as a cheap option. And also it can be activated if you go first, you can just set it, so it's pretty good. We're also playing 1 Synchro Rumble. You could get away with not playing this card, but if you play this card, it just makes some of your combo lines a lot smoother. And it also increases just your ceiling of your combos and also gives you some form of follow-up if you decide to not activate it after you search it. So this is just searchable with Crimson Dragon, which is going to be part of a lot of your combos. For the extra deck, we have a bunch of Centurions. Primus is part of your combo. When you make it, you just add Emblem of Oath. And then if you go second, you can also choose to destroy cards on your opponent's field when you do that. And then when your opponent gets rid of your card by card effect, you can summon this card back. And then we have the level 12s. We have Auxilia, which when summoning can add any Centurion card to your hand, which is pretty good. If you don't have enough monsters, you can add a monster. If you already have enough monsters, you can add any of the traps. So it's pretty flexible. And also during the end phase, you can reset a Centurion from your graveyard or banishment back to your back row. Legacia also has that effect, but when it is summoned, instead of adding a card, it just destroys a card and draws a card for free. This is a pretty good effect, and also you have to draw to be able to destroy, so if you get hit by draw, you are unable to use the effect to actually destroy anything. But that's something to keep in mind. And also it has a protection effect for all your monsters with 2000 or less attack. It cannot be destroyed by battle. For the generic level 12s, we are playing Crimson Dragon. This card should be pretty familiar if you have been playing in ranked for any amount of time in this current meta. This card adds Synchro Rumble when it is summoned, and as a quick effect can return itself back to the extra deck and then tag out to a level 12 by targeting another level 12 on your field. So a monster you can summon is Red Supernova, which is basically a board wipe, and Shooting Quasar, which is an Omni Negate. I will quickly look at the skill as well. The skill is actually really good, surprisingly good for a deck that is already pretty good in the TCG. So this allows you to reveal a Centurion and then add in any Centurion card from your deck to your hand. So that includes spells and traps as well. So that's really good. And if you control Legacia, or if your opponent controls a monster, you can add Emblema card from your deck to your hand, and then you either send a Centurion monster or set a Centurion monster to your field from your deck. So even if you draw a handful of non-engine, if you go second, you can still do full combo just by using this effect to set your starter in your back row. And also it is a way to immediately add Emblema Salvation and then immediately banish a card before you commit as well. So yeah, let's actually have a look at a replay where I explain the main combo so I can kind of walk you through what the deck is actually trying to do. Alright, we have level 10 bot Kaiba, where we can basically show you the full combo of the deck. So, as you can see, we have one brick in our hand, which is the MF6, but any Centurion monster is full combo, and this is the combo that I'll be showing you in this game. So we will be revealing our monster, immediately adding a field spell to our hand. So there are multiple ways to do this combo, this is just one of the ways that I've found. But if you have another way to do the combo, and as long as it works, it will be fine. We'll go Trudea, tag out into Primera, add Wake Up, summon a level 4 token, bash the Wake Up, send a trap, and we're gonna make a Primus, add Emblema Oath. Oath summons, sets a Centurion, it will summon the Centurion, and something to keep in mind with specifically Emblema Oath is that it actually has a lock in it that says while you control the card that you place on your field or a card with the same name, you can only special summon Centurion monsters from your extra deck. So if you want to summon Crimson Dragon, you have to make sure that you remember what you summon with Emblema Oath, and then that monster cannot be on the field. So because we use it to summon Gargoyle 2, we have to make sure that when we are trying to make Crimson Dragon, Gargoyle 2 is not on the field. So that's just something to keep in mind. We'll make a Legacia first, we'll draw a card, because this card allows us to draw cards even if your opponent doesn't have anything for us to pop. So we'll draw our first card, one of many cards that we're going to draw across the turn. Ashi will summon itself, we'll draw another card. Gargoyle will actually send the Legacia, which kind of sounds weird, but as I said in the deck profile, we are kind of lacking in zones in dueling, so it's something that we have to do to give us more zones to do our combo. So we will make a copy of Auxilla. Auxilla normally will add a level 4, but we already drew level 4s off of the draws from Legacia and the Archery, so we can add a trap instead. So because we haven't used our normal summon, we can just use our normal summon right now. And then Phalanx will revive back to level 8 Synchro, and then now we can make Crimson Dragon. So Crimson Dragon will on summon add a copy of Synchro Rumble, and then tag out into one of your level 12. So this is using Quasar as an example, but obviously if you don't have it, you can summon a red Supernova instead. We can go Synchro Rumble, summon back a level 8 Synchro. We can't summon any of the other ones because the other ones can only be special summoned basically once, because it locks yourself when you use the effect. As you can see, there's a little symbol here that tells you that you can't special summon it. Same with the Archery, but the Primus doesn't actually have this restriction, so you can always use the Rumble to summon it back. So we'll summon it back and leave it on the field just so that we can synchro summon using it during our opponent's turn. So we'll set all of our cards. So we have a Salvation, which requires us to send a face-up spell trap, monster card in the spell and trap zone. So this is basically going to be what happens when you have to activate a back row. So we're gonna, at our earliest opportunity, use the effect of our Trudea in the back row, summon itself, trigger the field spell. We're gonna make a Crimson Dragon. Crimson Dragon will make a second level 12. Again, depending on what you have in your extra deck, you might be summoning something different. And then now we can actually use the MF6 to put our level 12 Synchro in the back row. And then now, because we have a card in the back row again, we can now have a target for either Salvation or the counter trap to be able to send it to the graveyard to use its effect. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The deck is really consistent. As you can see, any brick is still full combo. So now let's actually have a look at a replay of an actual game in Ranked. Alright, in our game we're playing against Ferions, which is an actual good deck, but we are going first. When we go second against most of these meta decks, we're just hoping to draw stuff like Dark Ruler to actually be able to have a chance of playing, or just have the correct hand traps to actually win. But the deck is definitely a lot better going first. So this replay is taken slightly before I figured my combos out, so it's gonna look a bit different, and I think I do misplay a bit, and I am not able to do the same combo that I did on the Kaiba replay, so I'm gonna be missing out on some interruptions, but I think on the grand scheme of things, it's still gonna be way more than enough interruptions, even if we couldn't do the whole complete combo. As you can see, we still have a Gargle to stranded in our hand, and we won't be able to summon it this turn because we don't have a tuner for it to synchro with. So we still are able to make a Crimson Dragon. This time we're going to make Red Supernova because in this replay I'm not playing the Quasars, to basically show you this deck working without Quasars in the extra deck. So opponent will activate their Broken skill, add a bunch of cards in their hand, and then they're gonna also add Regulus, which is kind of annoying. It contests our board, and what's even more annoying is that they drew Lava Golem, which means 2 of our interruptions are immediately gone. We can chain our DD Crow, which at least gets rid of the Lily Borea, even though they can still summon the Regulus. So that kind of cuts them off of the search. So we're gonna kind of let them combo a bit because that doesn't really threaten our board just yet. So now that they gotten rid of their Regulus, we can summon our stuff from the back row, we can draw another card with Archery, and then we can use our field spell to Synchro Summon. They're gonna equip the Regulus back to their monster to get the negate back online, but we do have an out to that. We're gonna try to pop, he's gonna try to negate, we have a Veiler in hand, so we can negate the Regulus negate, and then pop the Xyz. Gonna go in regular, we can go chain the trap to banish it, and then they can go Lily Borea. We don't really have any interruptions left, but he's kind of out of gas as well. I don't think he has a lot else to do this turn. Our Synchro protects our monster from being destroyed by battle, so he can't beat over it. Now end phase, we can put our stuff back in the back row and then summon back the MF6 as well. We're gonna try to summon our tuner, he's gonna negate, thinking that that would stop us from Synchro Summoning, but we do have the Synchro Rumble from last turn for exactly this situation for follow-up. He's gonna try to cross out our Primera, but because he did that, the Synchro Primaris actually summons itself back, and then that still gives us tuner access regardless. So now we can just make the level 12 Legacia again, get rid of his field, and then just attack for game. So yeah, it's actually a pretty fun deck. It might take some time to get used to, but definitely recommend if you are on a low budget and looking for a fun deck to play in this miserable format. So yeah, thanks for watching, goodbye.